and welcome to Unacademy IAS, a one-stop destination for all the English medium civil services aspirants. Welcome to the launch of Conquer Mains Initiative 2025. This initiative is not just for those who are writing the upcoming civil services mains examination, which will start from 22nd August 2025, but also those who are preparing for the civil services examination 26 and 27. Reason being, somebody who has started the preparation right now, you need to understand the trend of questions asked by UPSC in the mains examination as well. I know you would have focused on the prelims now, but you need the analysis for the mains as well so that you understand what are the important areas to focus upon, which topic to read, how much, which topic to practice answer writing, etc. So please do not miss out any of the videos that are uploaded under this initiative. And if you're liking this initiative, show us your appreciation by hitting the like button. And if you're yet to join our YouTube channel, kindly do it right now. Now, before I take up the discussion, the Conquer Mains 2025 will be conducted under three phases. In the phase one, subject wise faculties will be taking up the PYQ trend analysis. Here we are going to cover the question papers from 2013 to 2024. And in this particular trend analysis, you will understand what are the important chapters. Should you be reading all the chapters at the same time, preparing for prelims as well as the mains? Which chapters carry more weightage for the mains examination? What kind of questions have been asked in the mains examination from different areas? And at the same point of time, because I'll be handling the Indian economy part in this discussion, I will tell you what is the importance of current affairs in preparing for the mains examination. That will be the stage one. Stage two, there are certain important areas which are part of GS papers that you generally do not read, do not revise when you're preparing for the prelims examination. But nevertheless, these are very important questions in the past have been asked, the straightforward questions from these areas in the mains examination. And that's a reason. The faculties, subject specific faculties, will be having a complete coverage of areas such as world history, post independence history, international relations, internal security, and disaster management. And after that comes the third phase, that is the current affairs. So the focus of this initiative is not just for not just for the static portion, but also for the current affairs portion as well. So in this particular third phase, different faculties will be taking up very important, high yielding topics from current affairs. These topics generally are not discussed in the books, not discussed in your reference material, but nevertheless, because this is there in the current affairs, very, very important. So that will be the third phase. So the Conquer Mains will be conducted for the next couple of weeks or next 2 months under these three stages. Now, if you're someone who is preparing for the civil services examination 2026 and 27, you need a comprehensive coverage of the static portion as well as the dynamic portion. You need to have a comprehensive test series for prelims as well as a mains. You need to have a very good reading material so that your preparation is comprehensive and it will be as per the UPSC requirements. We are offering our courses at a price of 24,999. And if you use the code IAS English, you will also get free extension of up to 6 months. Those who are interested, please do check out the details by clicking on the link provided in the description below. Now let me start. The scope of this particular video will be GS paper 3. GS3, and specifically under GS3 which part? That is Indian economy. Just to make it very clear, GS paper 3 has other important areas as well. There is internal security, disaster management, science and technology, environment, etc. So out of all these particular areas, this video will focus on only one area, that is Indian economy. Now, before I start discussing the trend of the kind of questions which have been asked, what is the syllabus which has been provided for Indian economy? If you compare the prelims syllabus as well as the mains syllabus, what you'll observe is very simple. For prelims examination, the syllabus provided for Indian economy is present only in one line. But for mains examination, the syllabus has been provided in full details, at least much more comprehensive compared to what has been provided for prelims. So this is the syllabus, but for easier understanding for you people, what I have done is I've divided all of this particular syllabus into easier 10 topics. 10 topics, easy way. What are the 10 topics? National income and inflation. I've merged both of them. Fiscal policy, for example, finance commission, concept of budgeting, concept of taxation, etc., are part of fiscal policy. Agriculture. Before I go forward, a very important point here. Although I've written agriculture here, listen to me very carefully. All the areas that you need to cover in this particular, let's say, chapter that is of agriculture is not purely economics. Lot of these concepts are even studied under the subject of geography. But the geography specifically is not mentioned in GS paper 3. But the concepts that you have learned in geography will be asked under this area of agriculture. For example, the cropping patterns, cultivation cycles in India, the types of crops cultivated in India, etc. So you would have studied that under the subject of geography. Geography is present in a different GS paper, but here the questions are also asked. And in the same way, I just want to tell you one more important point here itself. It's not that what you have studied in Indian economy will be purely asked only in this particular paper. The past we have seen, for example, you must have studied infrastructure, which also is one of the listed topics here, under GS paper 3 economics. But the concepts associated with infrastructure will be asked in the geography paper. Reason being, there is one area, overlapping area between geography and economics, that is economic geography. So do not be worried, but essentially one chapter that I've listed here is agriculture. Fourth is industries and international trade. Fifth one is infrastructure and investment models. Sixth one is planning. Seventh, land reforms. Eighth one is employment. Ninth, inclusive growth. Tenth, miscellaneous. What is a miscellaneous here? In the past, we have seen questions being asked from purely current affairs. These are not the topics which will fall under any of these particular topics. For example, in one year, there was a question asked on money laundering. Does it fall under any of these particular topics? Yes, overlap is there, but you can place it under the concept of miscellaneous. Questions have been asked in the past on poverty in GS paper 3. Social issue topic, but here it has been asked again under miscellaneous. Right? So I hope you understand there are certain areas which are gray areas, do not fall specifically under any of these particular topics. There might be some overlap. That's a reason I've kept it separately miscellaneous. Now, how many questions have been asked from 2013 to 2024? So this analysis covers from 2013, that is when the trend, or let's say the pattern that was followed by UPSC was changed. But before I go forward, please understand one another important thing. After the pattern got changed from 2013, in GS paper 3, initially the practice of the UPSC was higher weightage was given to Indian economy. Very high weightage. How much? Generally around 10 questions used to be asked from the subject of Indian economy. That is essentially the pattern was 20 questions, even today same number of questions, but earlier 20 questions, all of them used to carry 12 and half marks. But now the pattern has been changed. Equal weightage, or let's say some amount of weightage is given for other subjects as well. So that Indian economy has good amount of marks, but in addition to that, other subjects will also have good amount of marks or weightage provided in the GS paper. Right now, instead of 12 and half being the maximum marks per question, the first 10 questions will carry 10 marks each. Next 15 questions will carry Sorry, next 10 questions will carry 15 marks each. So that is the pattern which is being followed by the UPSC now. And according to that, the weightage has been changed. And not just that, the maximum number of words also has been changed. Earlier for 12 and a half, the UPSC would impose a word limit of 200. Now it is a different. For 10 marker, it is 150 words. And for 15 marker, it is a 250 words. So these are some of the right trends, or let's say the changes in the patterns that have been done by UPSC in the last 1 decade plus. But more importantly, let's say from 2013 till 2024, the most recent UPSC mains examination. How many questions have been asked from the subject of Indian economy? The total number of questions, according to the topics that I've listed, is 106. 106, that is the number of questions asked in the last 10 plus years from the subject of Indian economy. And if you take the most recent years, let's say last 5 years, you will see in 1 year, the question asked, that is the 2024, 7 questions. In 2023, 8 questions. 2022, 6 questions. 2021, 9, and 2029. So on an average, again I'm saying agriculture I've counted here, although you will get those concepts in the geography paper. So if you count all of those, it is safe to say that in the range of 7 to 8 questions will come from this area of Indian economy, including the agriculture area. So out of 7 to 8 questions, I hope you understand this. Out of 7 to 8 questions, some of them, at least half of them, are 10 marker, and the remaining are 15 marker questions. Now, out of these 100 questions, which topic has got the highest weightage is also equally important, because can you give equal time, equal importance in terms of time to all the chapters which are there in your books? For example, very often, whenever I'm taking, let's say, a current affairs session, for example, I took the Prelims 2025, or even very recently while discussing something else, one of the student asked me a question. Sir, when I studied for prelims or when I took the classes, there was a lot of discussion given in the class, in the book, in the notes, etc., regarding a concept such as planning, regarding a topic that is planning. But you are not discussing planning for current affairs for prelims 2025. You are not giving too much of weightage for planning in the mains 2025 as well. Why is it so? If that was not so important, why the discussion has been provided? Listen to me very carefully. I'll tell you the same answer that I gave the answer to the respective student. I said, is planning a part and parcel of Indian economy? Yes, no doubt regarding that, as it played a very important role in the promotion of Indian economy. Again, absolutely yes. But if you look at the number of questions which have been asked, let's say now in the mains examination from 2013 to 2024, how many questions have been asked? Just one question. Just one question. That's it. Out of 100 plus questions from this area, how many questions have been asked purely on planning? One question. And that question was also a straightforward question. That is, it asked you what are the fundamental differences or compare and contrast between the Planning Commission and the Niti Ayog. That's it. Beyond that, nothing has been asked so far in the last 10 years in the mains examination from this chapter of planning. So does it mean that you'll have to completely ignore the chapter of planning for the upcoming mains examination? The answer to that question again will be no. Please do not ignore it. Reason being, whenever you're reading current affairs, you will come across multiple topics. And these particular topics are an indicator of what kind of questions will be asked in the mains examination. Nobody can guarantee, but make a note of this. It is an indicator. For example, Niti Ayog, was it there in the newspaper very, very recently? Of course, yes. Because of the governing council meeting, because of Niti Ayog completing 10 years. Now tell me, if you knew that, don't you think automatically within planning now you should focus more on the concept of Niti Ayog? How Niti Ayog has been helpful? What are the contributions of Niti Ayog, etc., etc.? So that's the reason. Please understand the importance given to these particular topics according to the UPSC pattern or UPSC question papers in the last 10 plus years. So the most important chapter will be agriculture. Most important will be agriculture. More than 30 questions have been asked from agriculture. That's the reason I'm saying whatever concepts you have learned on agriculture in your geography, focus on that. Whatever concepts you have learned on agriculture in economy, focus on that as well. And at the end of this particular session, I will tell you what are the important areas. I will basically list out for all of these particular chapters one after the other. So one is agriculture. Second one is the infrastructure and investment models. Infrastructure and investment models. How many questions? 20 questions. 20 questions out of 100 have come from the infrastructure and investment model. The third important weightage is the fiscal policy, the static as well as the dynamic, both of them. Fiscal policy that includes budgeting, that includes taxation, that includes, right, let's say even the finance commission. In addition to this, other important areas are inclusive growth. The other important area is national income and inflation, right? And not to forget one more very important area, that is of industries and international trade. But if you look at, let's say, between industries and international trade, which has more weightage, industries has got more number of questions compared to international trade. So these are certain very important areas. Please do not miss out these areas when you're preparing for the mains now. And somebody who is aiming to ace the CSE 2026, this is an indicator for you now. It is basically an indicator. It is providing you the direction as to what should be your focus when you're preparing, when you're attending the classes now, when you're making notes, when you're revising, when you're practicing answer writing. Now, what kind of questions have been asked? I'll give you 5 types of questions. Listen to me very carefully now. I'll give you 5 types of questions which have been asked. And basically, the same model has been used by UPSC in multiple years, but the model doesn't change. It basically follows the same pattern. So, one type of question which are asked is purely from current affairs. Purely from current affairs. So, how do I understand that it is purely from current affairs? My dear, these are the kind of things which are not given in any book for you. They are not given in any book whatsoever for you. These are purely picked up from current affairs, that is, let's say, from whatever is being discussed in and around you. Right? So, for example, have a look at the 3 questions that I've listed from different years here. Question number 1, what are the causes of persistent high food inflation in India? Comment on the effectiveness of the monetary policy of the Reserve Bank of India to control this type of inflation. This question was asked in 2024, by the way. 2024, last year. The reason being, post pandemic, one area of concern for both the government as well as Reserve Bank of India has been inflation. It has been the area of inflation. And specifically within inflation, what has been a bigger headache for Reserve Bank of India? It has been food inflation. And I hope you understand this. Reserve Bank of India, through its policies, is more effective in controlling the demand side of the inflation, not the supply side of the inflation. And in case of India, the demand side as well as supply side, both of them contribute to inflationary trends. And that has been a bigger concern for Reserve Bank of India. They are in multiple months, they have not been able to control inflation in the range of 2% to 6%. In fact, the target given to them is 4%. So in that particular context, this particular question was asked. Now somebody will ask me, so if this question is asked, how do we address it? Because if the question is purely static, I'll give you examples of those kind of questions as well. If the question is purely static, I have got information. I've read NCRT, I've read the book, I've given the handouts that you have given in the classes, I've attended UCAN sessions, there also I've given handouts. I can use all of it, I can make an answer. But here, the question is purely current affairs. How do I address it? Whenever you write these kind of, let's say, answers, whenever you attempt these kind of questions, you have three steps. That is, there are three components to the answer: introduction, main body, and the conclusion or the way forward. So, in introduction, you can simply say post pandemic, right? In the introduction, you can simply say that post pandemic, Reserve Bank of India, along with Government of India, have been taking several measures to control inflation. Although reforms have been announced, although steps have been taken, the food inflation has been a cause of concern for both of them. That is your introduction. And do not write a very lengthy introduction also. Keep it very short. Then come to the main body. In case of main body, you can simply say, what are the causes of inflation? The supply side inflation as well as the demand side inflation. But in case of food inflation, it is mainly caused because of supply side factors. Now list out what are the supply side factors which have contributed to this particular problem in India. For example, uneven monsoon, right? Or let's say unseasonal rainfall, supply side constants such as not having sufficient warehousing capacity, etc. Right? So these are some of the issues, or these are some of the factors which have contributed to the food inflation in the domestic market. Then you can simply write about what kind of reforms or measures have been undertaken by the government in order to control food inflation. For example, the government of India has been selling multiple types of agriculture commodities under the brand name Bharat. Bharat pulses. The government of India has been providing many of these horticulture products at subsidized prices in the market to ensure the burden on the household, Aam Aadmi such as you and me, will be much lower. You must have heard of Kanda Express, etc. So you will have to incorporate all of these particular things which you have studied in current affairs and write a very effective answer if at all similar question is asked. Right? So comment, second question, comment on the important changes introduced in respect of long-term capital gains tax and dividend distribution tax in the Union Budget 18 and 19. These kind of questions in the last 10 years has been asked twice. Twice in the sense, something is announced in the budget. Suddenly UPSC will pick up that question and put it, or they will pick up that concept and give it in the form of a question in the mains examination. Let me give you one example from the current affairs. Very recently, the government of India in the budget announced reforms to promote global capability centers. Can there be a question asked in the mains examination on this? Definitely. Government of India announced restructuring income taxation in India. Can there be a question on this? Definitely yes. So I hope you understand certain reforms or the measures which have been announced by the government in the budget, many of the times have been picked up by UPSC and a question has been asked on it. I'll give you one more example here. Last year, in the month of July, 23rd July, when the union government presented a budget after the elections, there was an announcement to promote employment in India. And in that particular employment announcement, out of 5 initiatives, one of the initiative was to promote internship program in India, which has been launched now. Prime Minister's internship program. So suddenly UPSC can feel that is a very important area. Question can be asked in the mains exam. So please be very careful. UPSC has the habit of asking questions in this way. Third, craze for gold in Indians has led to a surge in import of gold in recent years. And this has put pressure on the balance of payments and external value of rupee. In view of this, examine the merits of the gold monetization scheme. This was announced right a decade ago, and question was asked by UPSC in the same year. But more importantly, if you have read the newspapers, you will also know that very recently the government of India has made announcement regarding the same gold monetization scheme. That is, the gold monetization scheme had three components, three types: short term, medium, and long. The short term, because it is done by the banks, the center has stated if the banks want to continue that, they can continue. But the medium and long term, where the liability was on the government of India, they have discontinued. And not just that, regarding gold, there are so many things which are there in the discussion. Sovereign gold bond, gold ETFs, central banks, including Reserve Bank of India, pooling in huge amount of gold now. The gold prices sharply rising, again falling, and again rising above 1 lakh rupees for every 10 grams in recent times. All these are the kind of areas that the UPSC might feel are relevant, are important, and a question can be asked. And on these, books will not give you the information. You will get this information only from the current affairs preparation that you people have. In fact, next one is right. I'll tell you the examples again associated with this. In fact, couple of days ago, regarding the schemes, because I'm talking about schemes here, regarding schemes, I've done a detailed analysis of 15 important schemes for the mains examination. Around 15 plus schemes I've covered in a detailed way. That video is available in our YouTube channel in the live section. Please have a look at it. And once you have a look at it, during the process, I want you people to just listen to it. Don't jot down anything. Don't write down anything because you're afraid you might miss out some information. Whatever I discuss regarding these particular 15 schemes, 15 plus schemes, there is a handout provided. There is a PDF provided of that, which is there in my Telegram channel. And before you're wondering, sir, how can I get the access to that? At the end of the session, I'll display the QR code of my Telegram channel. You can join, you can download that. And this PPT that I'm using in the form of PDF will be uploaded by today evening. You can download that as well. Okay. Now, what are examples? Some examples that you can just think of probable questions based on the importance in the current affairs and the recurrence in the newspaper. For example, in this process, what I've done is I've taken certain articles which have been provided in the Hindu newspaper. And specifically, which page of Hindu newspaper? The text and context page of Hindu newspaper. If you're a reader of Hindu, you will know that in text and context page, important current affairs articles in elaborate manner, that is in a detailed manner, the articles are provided. In the last couple of months, one recurring theme has been the virtual digital assets, VDAs, virtual digital assets. Right? So there is one article here. There is one more article which talked about the gray area regarding the taxation of virtual digital assets in India. So can this be a probable question? Of course, yes. Can this be a probable question? Of course, yes, because it has been there in the discussion for so many months. UPSC might pick up a question, and in the prelims, there was no dedicated question regarding the, let's say, the virtual digital assets as well. So, in addition to this, have a look at one more article here. This is one more article from the text and context page of Hindu. There has been a lot of discussion associated with poverty, correct? A lot of discussion is happening associated with poverty. A concept of poverty, the question can be asked in the social issue paper, can be asked in GS paper 3, that is under Indian economy as well. But this aspect of poverty has a dynamic area as well as the static portion as well. For example, in case of poverty, what is the static portion? How do we measure poverty in India? Very simple, straightforward. What do you mean by poverty? How do we measure poverty? What are the different recommendations of different committees so far? Which is the most recent committee recommendation? That is the static portion. But in addition to that, there's a dynamic aspect as well. What is the dynamic aspect of poverty here? Multi-dimensional poverty index. What is the need to have an official poverty line in India? The recent estimates which have been published by World Bank regarding the poverty in India, etc., etc. So there is a dynamic aspect, there is a static aspect. So there was one article which spoke about how poverty is measured in India. Right, so that is essentially given in this article. So can there be a straightforward question, because poverty was there in the newspaper, was there in the current affairs, etc.? Absolutely yes. Okay, now second type of question which is asked, technical questions. Technical means what? There are certain questions where you can take liberty with your writing. Liberty in the sense, even if you can write in a generic way, the answers are acceptable. You may not get the maximum number of marks, but the answers are acceptable. But then there are certain kind of question where you have no option except to write the technical things in the answer. What do I mean by technical things? Have a look at the question here. There was one question in 2021. Explain the difference between the computing methodology of India's gross domestic product before 2015 and after 2015. Now tell me, what can you write which is very general, which is going to address this kind of a question? Write very general statements that before 2015 it was done, after 2015 it has changed. But beyond that, what more can you write? Either you know the technical things behind the GDP measurement, or you do not know. And if you keep on writing unnecessary things, such as a GDP is measured under three methods, right? The production method, the expenditure method, right, and the consumption method, etc. And based on that, if you're expecting, right, you will write all the formulas, you will get marks, etc. No, question is not that. Question is specifically talking to you or asking you about. Tell me what has changed before 2015 and after 2015 regarding GDP measurement in India. Are technical in nature. These are technical in nature. You should have very good knowledge if you want to write answers to these kind of questions. Just give you one example here from current affairs. In recent times, there was a survey which was conducted, household consumption expenditure survey. Now, if UPSC will ask you how household consumption expenditure survey will help in improving the credibility, or let's say in revising the statistical parameters or statistical measures, elaborate this particular statement, explain this particular statement, what will you write? Think of it, what will you write? You should know. You should know what is the importance of household consumption expenditure survey. Why do we collect that particular data? How do we use that data in revising various, right, let's say parameters such as, right, let's say GDP, inflation, WPI, CPI, etc. I'll give you one more example. In recent times, there have been calls for revamping India's statistical system. Revamping India's statistical system. If UPSC will ask you this kind of a question, let's say, for better policy making and better implementation of the policies, the foundation is the right collection of data. And in this particular context, there is a need for revamping India's statistical system. Elaborate this particular state. What will you write in that case? So I hope you understand, in the past, these kind of technical statements or technical questions have been given in UPSC mains examination. For that, you should be well prepared. Right, so this is question number one. Have a look at one more example here. Most of the unemployment in India is a structural in nature. Examine the methodology adopted to compute unemployment in the country and suggest improvements. To write the answer to this kind of question, you should know what is a structural unemployment. What is causing structural unemployment in India? What are the solutions to this? What reforms have been undertaken by the government so far, etc. You cannot simply talk about any kind of unemployment in this case. You should specifically target structural unemployment. And earlier, there was also a question on jobless growth in India. What are the factors which are contributing to jobless growth in India? That has to be, right, known to you. You should know the factors causing that. You cannot willy-nilly write anything and expect to get marks. I hope you understand these kind of questions are very technical in nature. You should have the right knowledge to write this. I'll give you a couple of examples. What kind of articles were there in the newspaper? What could be the probable areas? Two examples I'll give you. Very recently, there has been a lot of discussion associated with genome edited rice. Correct? All of you have come across this. Again, I'm taking examples from Hindu newspaper only. Only from Hindu newspaper. There is a discussion regarding genome edited rice. Now tell me, can UPSC ask you a question associated with, let's say, genome edited rice connected to food security, connected to improved earnings of the farmers, connected to protection of environment, etc.? Definitely yes. Right. So I hope you understand this. They can ask you a straightforward question: genome editing versus genetic modification. What is the difference? You should know the fundamental technical difference between both of them. Done? Right? So there is, right? There are articles like this. This is one example. I'll give you one more example. How can the budget arrest growth decline of GDP or economic decline? Now, in this context, there is a lot of discussion which has been provided in this article. How government will use the policies in the budget to promote and revive and promote the economy. Don't you think if you want to write an effective answer to the question asked on this, you should know what is capital formation? To know that, you should know what is the importance of private investments in India. That is, the private sector investments in India. You should know what is the meaning of a slowdown in the growth. You should have data regarding what has happened to the GDP in the last 2 or 3 quarters. I hope you understand. For writing these kind of answers, you need technical knowledge. You should have technical knowledge. I'll give you one example in this context. Couple of years ago, there was a question asked by UPSC, that is, do you agree that Indian economy is experiencing a V-shaped recovery? Do you agree? What are the arguments in favor of that? So if a question on this nature is asked, you cannot write anything. You cannot simply say, yes, India is experiencing growth. Yes, growth is increasing. Yes, people are getting money, etc. No. What are the arguments? What kind of data can you provide to support your argument to basically say that, yes, India is experiencing V-shaped growth? And if you're wondering, sir, from where will I get this data? Economic survey. Budget documents. That is the area. That's the reason those two documents are so very important for you. And moreover, these are the documents published by the government. Genuine sources for you. Okay. Now, third type of, right, let's say, questions which are asked. Third pattern of question. Combinations. What is a combination question here? The UPSC will not ask you a straightforward only on one area of Indian economy. For example, earlier the question was, let's say, on, right, let's say, budgeting. Earlier the question was straightforward on a particular scheme. Right? They would ask a straightforward question on a structural unemployment. But in this case, no, they will not do that. They will take two or three concepts, merge them into a single question, ask you to connect all of these dots. I'll give you example. Have a look at this. Investment in infrastructure is essential for more rapid and inclusive economic growth. Discuss in the light of India's experience. You have studied infrastructure as a separate topic. You have studied inclusive growth as a separate topic. UPSC is merging both of them and asking you to connect the dots between both. A lot of the students get confused when these kind of questions are asked. At that particular point of time, I do understand, under a lot of stress and a lot of strain, at that point of time, students fail. A lot of them fail to connect both of the dots. You're asking me, sir, how do I develop that kind of, let's say, knowledge? How do I develop that kind of a thinking? Whenever you read any topic, even for the next 2 months, Whenever you read any topic, just give it a minute. Just take a minute, take a pause. Try to connect these particular topics with other things as well. Just to see if there is any kind of a connection that is existing. Can you connect the dots? And that will help you even in the mains examination. Then, second question, do you agree with the view that steady GDP growth and low inflation? We're talking about both of them now. Although there is a connection, when you're reading about GDP and inflation, there is generally a connection existing. But in the mains, they're asking, there is a steady GDP growth and low inflation. Do you think that has left the Indian economy in good shape? If yes, tell me how. You have to say yes, but what are the arguments? Again, you will have to have lot of knowledge, a lot of technical points in this. Third one, with a consideration towards a strategy of inclusive growth, the new Companies Bill 2013 has indirectly made corporate social responsibility CSR a mandatory obligation. Discuss the challenges expected in the implementation in its in the right earnest. Also discuss other provisions of the bill and their implications. Although very old question, but if you're reading newspapers, you will know that in the recent, let's say, games, Olympics, and other things, etc., the corporate social responsibility has played a very important role in India. A lot of these athletes have been trained under the CSR funding itself. Again, question can be asked. Why not? Questions have been repeated, not in the same way, but in a different wording. Questions have been repeated by UPSC many of the times. So, right. So, I hope you understand these kind of connections are being established. Okay, this is a basic example of a one type of a question asked, or let's say a pattern combination type. Now, if I want to give you examples, again from current affairs, is there any example? I've taken one article. Have a look at the title of the article. The title of the article is Digital Access. There is right a judgment associated with this, and this is connected to concept of financial inclusion. Financial inclusion in turn is connected to concept of inclusive growth. So can you connect these particular dots where you will move from the right to digital access to the concept of inclusive growth? Yes, you can connect the dots like this. I'll give you one more example. I'll give you one more example. Let's say the discussion associated with poverty. The government very recently has claimed that so many people have been moved out of poverty. Now, can there be a connection between poverty and inclusive growth? Yes. Very recently, there has been a discussion associated with income inequality and wealth inequality in India. Now, tell me, can there be a connection between the topics which are being discussed here and inclusive growth? There is a discussion associated with digital public infrastructure, DPI. Can you connect that with inclusive growth? I hope you understand. I'm trying to give you examples here. Right? What kind of examples that you can think of where you can connect these two different topics, which again will help you in having a critical thinking, analytical thinking, which will help you in answer writing when these kind of questions are asked in the mains exam. Okay, one more type of a question asked, one more trend, scheme based questions. Scheme based questions. I'll give you a couple of examples. What are the salient features of NFSA 2013? How has a NFS bill helped in eliminating hunger and malnutrition in India? 2021. It was a 15 marker question. Straightforward regarding the program of government of regarding scheme of government of India. And this is not just one question. In the past also questions have been asked on certain schemes, but what is the criteria? Is there a formula to determine only this scheme will be asked? There is absolutely no formula. But generally, the practice of UPSC is that try to pick up the schemes which are there in the current affairs, which are there in the discussion in the current affairs. For example, Very recently, the initiative such as Sagar Mala was there in the newspaper. Why? Sagar Mala was there in the newspaper because it has completed 10 years. It has completed 10 years. So, can UPSC ask a question? Probably yes. They might ask you what has been the success of Sagar Mala in the last decade. Explain that. I'll give you one more example. Very recently, initiatives such as a PLI, Production Linked Incentive, was there in the discussion. Initiatives such as Startup India was there in the newspaper. So suddenly UPSC can focus on these particular topics and ask you a question on the success, on the issues facing these particular schemes, etc. So try to focus on those particular schemes which are there in the newspaper, and that is exactly what I've done in my video. Again, I'm repeating, if you're interested, please do watch that particular video. I'll give you a couple of more examples here. This is an article again from Hindu newspaper. There was one more initiative of Government of India which was there in the discussion. Smart Cities Mission. Why it was there in the discussion? 10 years. It has completed 10 years. Out of 100 cities which were covered originally under this, only 18 cities have completed all the projects. Only 18 cities have managed to complete all the projects. Many of the other states, many of the other cities are finding it difficult to basically complete these particular projects. UPSC can ask you that, right? UPSC straightforward can ask you that particular question. I'll give you one more example. Agriculture and allied sector. There is, right, a area within that, fisheries, right? Questions can be asked on fisheries. In fact, Government of India in the last couple of years has been promoting fisheries sector in India, right? For example, there is an initiative, PM Matsya Yojana, right? There is also a component under Sagar Mala to promote, right, the fishing activities, etc. I hope you understand. These are, right, basically the indicators for you. That's the reason again and again I'm reiterating this. Focus on these particular areas because the probability of question being asked on these areas is very, very high. Done? Okay. Now, last type of question, which are generally asked by UPSC, straightforward static question. Straightforward static questions. That is whatever you have memorized, whatever you have learned, whatever you have revised multiple times from the books, from the notes that you have made during your classes, etc. That is essentially asked. For example, look at the question number 1 here. Distinguish between capital budget and revenue budget. Explain the components of both of these budgets. Straightforward. No complexity here. No difficult words used. No, right, concepts being connected. Nothing. Even if you have read NCRT or for that matter any book, you can straightforward write an answer to this. I'll give you one more example here. Until last year, one of the favorite areas of UPSC under the fiscal policy was a taxation, and within that GST. Multiple questions have been asked in consecutive years by UPSC on GST. So look at one question here. Enumerate the indirect taxes which have been subsumed in the GST in India. Also, comment on the revenue implications of the GST introduced since July 2017. So you would have studied about GST. You would have memorized certain indirect taxes which are subsumed under GST. You can easily write the answer to this question. So multiple questions which have been asked are straightforward static questions. But before I go forward, I'll have to warn you here. What is the warning? The questions which have been asked straightforward like this are very less. Very less. Do not expect, let's say, out of 7 to 8 questions, right? Let's say 5 questions will be straightforward like this, or 4 questions will be straightforward. No, right? Generally, in agriculture, they have the habit of asking that. There is one more area, land reforms, where they have the habit of asking the straightforward question. But let's say you're talking about GDP, the habit of asking current affairs question is very high. Inflation, current affairs, right? Fiscal policy, mixture of both current affairs as well as, right, let's say dynamic areas, etc. So focus on static also. Do not miss out. Focus on static also, but try to interlink, try to connect that with the dynamic aspect. Right. So, a couple of examples in this context. In recent times, there is a discussion. Again, I've taken this from Hindu newspaper. Concept of beggar thy neighbor policy. You would have studied about the capitalism, socialism, mixed economy, anarcho capitalism, etc. Now, there is one more argument associated with that: beggar thy neighbor policies. That can be a potential question. Is consumption driven growth sufficient to achieve higher GDP for India? Because when you study about GDP, you will know that GDP can be achieved by investment, GDP can be achieved by consumption, GDP can be achieved by government expenditure. Right? A lot of times in the context of India, they say GDP is mainly driven by government expenditure. Right? So, is consumption driven growth sufficient for India, or consumption sufficient to promote growth in India? So these are the kind of static based question that UPC might ask you. Done? Okay. Now coming to the last part of the discussion, I will tell you from different topics what are the important areas. Again, I'm not including right all the current affairs here, not possible, but certain important areas. For example, national income and inflation. In the context of national income, GDP measurement question has already been asked before 2015, after 2015. But what is the need for rebasing? What is the need for rebasing? There is a lot of talk regarding both inflation as well as a national income, of rebasing them, properly collecting data. Right measurement can be done only by collecting right data, right, etc., etc. So, regarding inflation, rebasing, GDP, rebasing. Regarding inflation, apart from that, you can be asked on the concept of CPI and WPI. Right? What are the contributors to that? And very recently, the government of India also has set up a committee to rebase this. Automatically, they become important. In addition to that, the reforms that the government of India has undertaken, in fact, the economic survey had a table listing out all of the reforms that the government of India has undertaken in recent times to control inflation. What about fiscal policy? Fiscal policy, like I said, there are three parts to fiscal policy here. That is one, process of budgeting. Second one is the concept of a finance commission here. And the third one is essentially the idea of taxation. In case of budgeting, earlier the questions associated with the two types of budget, revenue side and capital side, has been asked. But nevertheless, focus on that. Can be repeated, you never know that. The concept of gender budgeting has been asked, but is there in the newspaper again and again. What is the need for the government of India reviewing or revamping, or let's say rationalizing? A better term will be rationalizing the schemes which is being done by government of India now. Are there any committee recommendations? What does the 15th FC say associated with that, etc., etc.? So these are certain very important areas for you. Finance Commission, I would simply say focus on what are the important areas that the 16th Finance Commission should focus on. What are the important parameters that the 16th FC should consider before giving recommendation? How 15th FC has been, right, let's say, important in terms of promotion of certain initiatives of the government, etc., etc. Regarding taxation, Income Tax Act of 1961 has been put up for a review now, or for that matter, GST. Within GST compensation cess, which is being discussed, even debated in recent times. GST Council importance, right, or promotion of fiscal federalism. And overall, in case of fiscal policy, there can be a overall argument that is the point of frictions between the center and states. The fiscal or financial frictions that have arisen between center and states. For example, central government introducing a new rule, that is net borrowing ceiling rule. Central government cracking down on the states which are renaming the schemes. Central government withholding certain funding, right, for the states. Central government imposing more and more cesses and surcharges which will reduce the amount of taxes which are collected under the divisible pool of taxes. All these are the areas of financial cracks that have developed between the center and states. Agriculture sector, as usual, under economy, focus on the areas such as uh, MSP, very important. Second is the warehousing concept. The government very recently has announced reforms in warehousing. The third one will be food processing. Focus on that. Questions have been asked in the past, again will be asked. Food processing. Fourth one is marketing, right? Marketing. What is the importance of marketing? ENAM, right? Or for that matter, let's say the APMC, etc. Marketing issues. And the fifth one is technology. How technology is helping. How technology is helping in, let's say, increasing the incomes of the farmers. In case of productivity, increasing the production, etc. Okay. So, in addition to this, as usual, other areas such as cropping patterns, different types of crops which are being cultivated in India. For example, last year there was a question asked on millets. This year there is a lot of discussion associated with oil seeds in India. The government, in fact, has announced multiple schemes to promote oil seeds. Fisheries, that is one more area. Animal rearing is one more area. So these are important areas in the agriculture sector. Industries and international trade. In the context of industries, I would recommend focus as usual on MSME. As usual, focus on MSMEs. In fact, the reason I'm saying is the definition has been changed. Questions have been asked in the past, again can be asked. Focus on LPG reforms also. Why? Mr. Narsimha Rao was there in the discussion. Mr. Manmohan Singh was there in the discussion. Both of them are basically referred to the architects of the 1991 LPG reforms. Service sector, focus on that. And within these particular industries also, specifically industries also have a focus. For example, civil aviation industry, that has been there in the discussion for multiple reasons. Or for that matter, let's say telecom industry, that has been there in the discussion for multiple reasons. You can't cover all the industries, but at least the ones which are there in the discussion, that should be a focus, right? So LPG reforms, different industries, MSMEs. And in fact, there is one area which has not been touched by UPSC so far, but has been there in the current affairs for multiple reasons. Insolvency and Bankruptcy Code, IBC. Insolvency and Bankruptcy Code, because of the Supreme Court judgment, right? Supreme Court judgment in case of Jindal Steel, automatically IBC becomes very important, right? So international trade. In international trade, focus on the protectionism, tariff as well as the non-tariff barriers, the areas such as World Trade Organization, for that matter, exchange rates, the balance of payments, right? Within balance of payments, capital account convertibility, right? The full convertibility, partial convertibility, the committee recommendations associated with this, etc., etc. Done. Regarding infrastructure and investment model, let me start with infrastructure. Infrastructure, focus on important infrastructure. Example, I expect one question to be asked on the area of ports in this year. Ports. Reason being, there is a lot of initiatives, a lot of announcement associated with the ports. And international trade is getting affected. Essentially, ports will come into picture, right? So reforms, current affairs, etc. Port becomes very important. In addition to ports, there is a concept of inland waterway. Focus on that as well. Inland waterway. And as usual, in the context of other infrastructure, civil aviation, railways for that matter. For example, railways was there in the discussion because they want to achieve by 2030 a net zero emission, right? Let's say the target as such, right? So these are the important areas. Investment models. I would recommend you people focus on PPP, public private partnership. Until very recently, PPP was a focus or important area where UPSC used to ask question. But for last right couple of years, the focus has been reduced. But you never know, can be asked. PPP, or for that matter, INVETS, Infrastructure Investment Trust, Real Estate Investment Trust, or for that matter, special economic zones, right, etc. All these are the important areas. Please do not make a mistake by missing them. And another very important area of investment model is FDI. Questions in the past have been asked on FDI. Again, they can be asked on FDI. In fact, it was there in the discussion also that India's net FDI has gone down. What are the possible reasons behind it? The causes behind it? What reforms the government of India can implement? In case of planning, I've told you already, the planning only one question has been asked in the last 10 plus years. And this year, because the Niti Ayog was there in the newspaper, it has completed 10 years. Question can be asked on Niti Ayog specific. Land reforms, one area where generally the question has been asked by UPSC. Right? At least one question, at least in right 3 years, in out of 3 years, 2 years, one question has come from land reform. But the beauty of the question has been that almost all the questions are on the same theme. Theme in the sense, the question basically focuses on the success of land reforms. That is one area, common area, success of land reforms. And along with that, they might add success of land reforms, how it has helped in rural development. Success of land reforms, what has been done by the state governments to achieve that. Success of land reforms, what will be help to the farmers because of the land reforms, etc. So these are the kind of connections that the UPSC has established and questions have been asked. In fact, in the current affairs also, land reforms has been there in the discussion. For example, one initiative, Swamitwa initiative, which has been launched by the government of India, was there in the discussion. I've covered that in the detailed video of schemes as well. Please have a look at it. Employment, as usual, very important. I'll give you an example. PM internship scheme. PM internship scheme. For example, a question can be framed on this in this way. The PM internship scheme will increase the employability of the job seekers in India. Straightforward question. But if you have read the PM internship scheme, you will understand to what extent it will increase the employability. It is not providing employment to you. It will train under that scheme. You will get the internship. You will be trained, and that will automatically improve your skilling level. You can be easily absorbed in the market because of the scheme. So it will not provide you employment. It will provide you. It will improve your employability. Right. So employment as usual. The situation in India, schemes announced by the government of India, right? What are the factors contributing to jobless growth phenomenon in India, right? Why there is a migrating population out of India in search of jobs, etc., etc. Okay, and as usual, finally, the topic of inclusive growth, right? Inclusive growth. There is one question which is generally asked in the mains examination. Please do not miss out. Okay, so these are the important areas as well as the topics that you need to read for the upcoming mains examination, and those who are preparing for the civil services 2026. These are the, let's say, important aspects that you need to consider, that you need to remember whenever you're making notes, whenever you're revising, whenever you're practicing answer writing. So this is the discussion I wanted to have with you people. If somebody wants to download the PPT that I've used in this particular session, it will be uploaded in my Telegram channel. This is the QR code of my Telegram channel. If you have benefited from this session, please do recommend this video to your other friends also who are preparing for the mains examination, your competitors, or somebody who is preparing for even next year, who can get the benefit from this initiative. But more importantly, please do not forget to hit the like button, and if you're yet to join our YouTube channel, kindly do it right now. Thank you. Have a great day.